Hello everyone. Today we shall discuss about the examination of third, fourth and sixth cranial nerve. Now why are these nerves studied together? This is because they form a physiological unit and supply the extraocular muscles of eye which are responsible for eye movement. Next. Now the origin. The third cranial nerve or the oculomotor nerve originates from the oculomotor nucleus which is present in the midbrain. The trochlear nerve or the fourth nerve is special because it originates from the dorsal aspect of the brainstem, mainly from the dorsal aspect of pons, and it is the only cranial nerve to originate from the dorsal side. Also, trochlear nerve supplies the muscle of opposite eye. The abducent nerve or the sixth nerve originates from the pontomedullary junction and it gets damaged when there is a higher intracranial pressure. Now the muscles of human eye, mainly there are 6 muscles of human eye: superior rectus, inferior rectus, medial rectus and lateral rectus, and the 2 obliques muscle, that is superior oblique and inferior oblique. Now the functions of these nerves. So the third cranial nerve or the oculomotor nerve supplies all the extraocular muscles of eye except lateral rectus and superior oblique. It also supplies levator palpebrae superioris. Then it carries the parasympathetic fibers to supply sphincter pupillae and ciliaris. The fourth nerve or the trochlear nerve supplies superior oblique. Sixth nerve or the abducent nerve supplies lateral rectus. So there is a common mnemonic, that is LR6SO4, lateral rectus supplied by sixth cranial nerve or the abducent nerve, and the SO or the superior oblique supplied by the fourth cranial nerve, that is the trochlear nerve. Now there is a mnemonic 2, 7, 9, 10, 3, 7, 9, 10 and 5, 7, 9, 10. 2, 7, 9, 10 are the vitamin K dependent clotting factors. 3, 7, 9, 10 are the cranial nerves which carry parasympathetic fibers. And 5, 7, 9, 10 are the mixed cranial nerves, that is they have both the sensory and motor component. Now when we do the examination of these nerves, then it is done under the following headings. First we will see the pupil of the subject, its size and shape, then whether squint is present or not, ptosis, movement of eye, pupillary light reflex, direct and indirect, accommodation reflex and nystagmus. Next. Now pupil is the aperture present in the eye through which the light enters in the eye. Mainly the iris controls its size. So its normal size is 2 to 4 mm and it is circular in shape. Now the diseases which affect pupil are, on the top right diagram it is shown aniridia. As you can see, you cannot distinguish between iris and pupil. This is because the pupil is absent. This occurs in glaucoma. This is known as aniridia. On the bottom diagram it is showing a keyhole pupil. This is due to the partial absence of iris, due to which pupil appears to be keyhole. This is known as coloboma. Then sometimes pupil is white in color, which occurs in leucorrhea, that is when in the conditions of retinoblastoma and congenital cataract. Now squint or strabismus is the deviation of the visual axis of the eye. Mainly it can be convergent squint, that is both the eyes diverted medially, or a divergent squint can be there. Then common classification of squint is also paralytic and non-paralytic squint. So main difference between paralytic and non-paralytic squint, which you can see just by looking at the patient, is that in the paralytic squint, since there is paralysis of the extraocular muscles of eye, that is why the movements of eyeball are restricted, and also the person will attain a specific head posture to control that squint. Now ptosis. Ptosis is the drooping of the upper eyelid. There are various classifications of ptosis, various ways by which we can classify ptosis. Now here the distance is MRD, that is the distance between the upper margin and the light reflex, which is seen in the center of the pupil. So this distance is known as MRD, and on the basis of this we can have mild, moderate and severe ptosis. Next. Now the fourth point was the movement of eye. So before that we should know the different actions of every muscle. Now the medial rectus primary action is adduction, lateral rectus causes abduction, superior rectus primary function is elevation, then it causes intorsion and adduction. Inferior rectus primary action is depression, secondary is extorsion and tertiary is adduction. Superior oblique primary action is intorsion, secondary is depression and then tertiary is abduction. And inferior oblique primary action is extortion, then it also causes elevation and the tertiary action is abduction. Now the common way to remember this is by SIN. All the superiors are intorters, that is superior rectus and superior oblique are intorters. Then the other mnemonic is RAD, all the recti are adductors. Except lateral rectus, you can see all the rectus like medial rectus, superior rectus and inferior rectus are the adductors of the eye. Then in the bottom it is written that since we see that the tertiary action of the obliques, that is superior oblique and inferior oblique, is abduction, so these muscles can be best tested with an adducted eye. So if the eye is adducted, then these muscles, obliques, can be better tested, and with the recti, that is with the superior rectus and the inferior rectus, since their tertiary action was adduction, so they can be best tested in an abducted eye. Next. Now we know that intorsion is the turning of the eyeball towards midline, that is towards the nose, and extorsion is the movement of the eyeball away from the nose, and this occurs along the antero-posterior axis. And elevation is movement of eyeball upwards, depression is movement of eyeball downwards, and abduction is movement of eyeball towards the temporal side, adduction is movement of eyeball towards the nasal side. Next. Now the clinical testing. So when you test the muscles of the eye and mainly you test the movements of the eye, then you can first test of a single eye by asking the subject to close one eye, and then you can test both the eyes together. Now, when a person is looking straight, so it is commonly asked how you are able to look exactly in the center. This occurs when all the muscles of the eye, that is all the recti and the obliques, are acting together in an equal proportion. You are able to look straight. Now, the clinical testing. Inferior oblique helps us to look laterally and upwards. Superior oblique causes person to look laterally and downwards. So laterally and downwards. So this superior oblique muscle is also used for cheating. So when you do some cheating in the exam or in the test, so the muscle of the eye that is acting at that time is superior oblique. Lateral rectus helps us to look laterally. Medial rectus looks medially. Superior rectus looks upwards and medially. Inferior rectus looks downwards and medially. Next. Now when both the eyes are working together, in the center we have the nose. So we have the medial rectus causing the adduction and the lateral rectus causing abduction. With the red color it has been written superior oblique, which will cause the eyeball to move down and out. Inferior rectus, written in blue color, will cause the movement of the eyeball downwards and medially, but it will cause extorsion of the eye. Now on the top it is written again superior rectus in the yellow color, which is causing the movement of the eyeball upwards. Then it causes intorsion and adduction. Then the inferior obliques moving the eyeball outwards, upwards and causing extorsion. Next. So again in this diagram taken from the A.K. Jain, color coding has been done where pink color shaded area is for adduction, orange shaded area is for abduction, red color area is the area where inferior oblique is working, green color for superior rectus, yellow is where superior oblique, and blue is for the inferior rectus.
Now when we consider the movements of both eyes together, then these are known as version movements. So levoversion is when you see on the left side, dextroversion is when you see on the right side. So when you see on the left side, when you see both the eyes, see on the left side, there is a leftward gaze. Then as you will notice, there is abduction in the left eye, but there is adduction in the right eye. So two opposite group of muscles will act here. So abduction of the left eye will be caused by lateral rectus. Adduction of the right eye will be caused by medial rectus. So in levoversion, there is medial rectus of right eye and lateral rectus of the left eye. Exactly opposite will occur in dextroversion. So dextroversion is when both the eyes are looking on the right side. So when you will look on the right side, then the left eye will get adducted, but the right eye will get abducted. So when the left eye will get adducted, there will be movement caused by medial rectus in the left eye, but in the right eye there will be lateral rectus. Then vergence movement, convergence. Convergence is when you look at the center of the nose, when you focus on the tip of the nose, then both the eyes come together. That is, both the eyes medial rectus work together. So there is adduction, and this is known as a convergence movement. Next. Now vertical and torsional movements. So vertical movements, again supraversion and infraversion. Supraversion is when you look up by both the eyes. So when you look up in both the eyes, so in both the eyes, superior rectus will mainly work. Then when you look downwards, infraversion. So here in both the eyes, inferior rectus will work. Now when you talk about the torsional movements, again intorsion or extorsion, but of both the eyes together. So as we just discussed, extorsion is movement of eye away from the nose and intorsion is movement of the eyeball towards the nose. So first we talk about dextrocycloversion. That is, it is the rotational movement of both the eyes towards the right side. So you just do it yourself also, that when you move both the eyes in a rotational movement from the center towards the right in a cyclical manner, that is from center slightly going up, then rotating and then moving towards the right side. So this torsional movement towards right is known as dextrocycloversion. So again here in both the eyes, different muscles will act. First, superior rectus will act in both the muscles because initially you go slightly up. Then you have to rotate. So when you rotate, so there is extorsion, that is movement outside, occurring on the right eye, and intorsion occurring on the left eye. So on the right eye, since there is extorsion, so here inferior oblique will work. But on the left eye, there is intorsion. So since here the eye is moving inwards, intorsion is occurring. That is mainly by superior rectus only, because its secondary action was intorsion. Then again you see that the right eye is getting abducted because it is seeing on the right side, and the left eye is getting adducted. So again in both, on the right side slight action of lateral rectus will come, and on the left side slight action of medial rectus. So different group of muscle will act in both. So as you can see in the right eye, mainly it is the inferior oblique, and on the left eye it will be the superior rectus when we talk about dextrocycloversion. Now when we talk about levocycloversion, that is when you focus on the left side but in a cyclical manner. In a cyclical manner, first you will go slightly up, then you will rotate your eyes towards outside, and then on the left side. So levocycloversion. So in levocycloversion, there is extorsion of the left eye, but intorsion in the right eye. So here in the right eye, superior rectus will work, but on the left eye, it will be inferior oblique. So it will be exactly opposite. On the right eye, superior rectus, and on the left eye, it will be inferior oblique. So when you will do these movements in the exam, examiner will ask you about the muscles involved. So main confusion occurs in these cyclical or the torsional movements. So first you should remember by heart all the primary, secondary and tertiary action of each and every muscle. Then you can easily tell which muscle is involved in which movement. Next. Now the light reflex, again pupillary light reflex, direct and indirect. So afferent is carried by the second nerve, efferent by the third nerve. So mainly it is of two types, direct and indirect or consensual. Then torch should always come tangentially, as we had already discussed this before. Next. Now the pathway for the light reflex. So mainly when the light information comes, it travels via the optic nerve, then optic chiasma, optic tract, and then it reaches superior colliculi or the prefrontal nucleus of both sides. Then via colliconuclear fiber, it reaches the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, and from here the impulse reaches ciliary ganglion, and finally the sphincter pupillae to cause the constriction. So this is the pathway for the light reflex, about which you should be well aware of. Next. So again in this schematic diagram, it is mainly shown how the consensual light reflex or the indirect light reflex occurs. So as you can see, when the light falls on the retina, it is initially carried by the cranial nerve root, shown by the red arrow, and then it reaches the pretectal nucleus, which is present in the midbrain. Now here, as you can see, both the green arrows are crossing each other. So if the light falls on the right eye, it will also supply the Edinger-Westphal nucleus of the left eye, because when the information will reach the pretectal nucleus of the right eye, it will cross over to supply the opposite side also. That is, it is supplying the same side also and the opposite side also. So since the Edinger-Westphal nucleus in the midbrain is supplied by both the sides, so that is why we also see an indirect or the consensual light reflex. Now, as you must be remembering, we discussed in the superficial reflex also that direct reflex is when you put the light on the same eye and you see the constriction of the same side. And the indirect reflex was when you show the light on right eye but you see the constriction of the left eye. So as you can see, this indirect reflex is because of the crossing of the fibers and the supply reaching the Edinger-Westphal nucleus from both the eyes. Now again, with the blue arrow, you can see that the impulse will travel through the third nerve, that is oculomotor nerve, to reach the ciliary ganglion. And then the ciliary sphincter or the sphincter pupillae. Now the accommodation reflex. Accommodation reflex, afferent is by second nerve, efferent is by third nerve. Here again you will ask the subject to focus on a distant point on a wall, and then after that you will ask him or her to focus on the tip of your finger, which is just placed 25 centimeter away from his or her eye. So here there will be accommodation reflex and response will be triple C response, that is constriction of pupil, convergence of eyeball and increased curvature of lens. So now how this accommodation reflexes occur. On the left side, the above and the bottom diagram both are when the rays are coming from a distant object, and on the right side the diagrams are showing when the rays are coming from a nearby object. So when you see a distant object, the suspensory ligaments which hold the lens are tight. So these suspensory ligaments are tight because they are in turn attached to ciliary muscles. Now these ciliary muscles are relaxed when you focus at a distant object, and the ligaments in turn become very tight and hence the lens is flattened. So you are able to focus a distant object on the retina by a flattened lens. But when you see a nearby object, then the ciliary muscles become tight. As a result, the ligaments become relaxed. The suspensory ligaments, as you can see on the top right diagram, have become relaxed, due to which the lens has bulged out. That is, it has become more rounded. So due to which the convergence power of lens increases and it is able to focus. So the lens becomes more rounded and it is able to focus the rays exactly on the retina from a nearby object. Next. Now pathway for the accommodation reflex is that visual information will travel by a visual pathway, that is from the optic nerve, optic chiasma, optic tract, the lateral geniculate body, optic radiation, finally reaching the visual cortex or the primary visual area, that is area 17. From here the fibers reach the frontal eye field, that is area number 8, Then via corticonuclear fibers, they will reach the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, which will then supply the third nerve, and ultimately it will supply the ciliary muscles, sphincter pupillae, and medial rectus. So due to supply to the ciliary muscles will contract and there will be increased curvature of the lens. Sphincter pupillae, so there will be constriction of the pupil, and medial rectus, so there will be convergence of the eyeball. So the triple C which we are seeing in the accommodation reflex occur because of this pathway. Now nystagmus is the to and fro movement of the eyeball. So mainly we have three types of nystagmus, that is horizontal nystagmus, vertical and rotatory. So when you have to test nystagmus of a person, whether he or she has nystagmus or not, you simply bring a pen or your own finger in front of his nose and then you move the finger rapidly to and fro from sideways and the subject has to follow your finger. Now you will suddenly stop the movement of your finger, and if his or her eyes are still moving, then it is the presence of nystagmus. If the eyeballs also stop moving with the stoppage of the movement of your finger, then the person does not have nystagmus. So this is the grading of nystagmus. Grade 1 is when the fast component is towards left, when you look on the left side. So if the person is looking on the left side. So mainly when you see nystagmus in a person, when his eyes are moving to and fro from one side or to the other, then there are two components in this, fast component and the slow component. Now the grading is done on the basis of the fast component. So when the person looks on the left side and his fast component is on the left side, then it is grade 1. Grade 2 is when the fast component is on the left side when the person looks straight, and grade 3 is the fast component is on the left side when the person looks on the right side. Now this nystagmus can be produced due to lesion in vestibular apparatus or cerebellum. In cerebellum we see a rapid pendular type of nystagmus. Then the nystagmus can also be produced due to damage to dorsal column pathway. Now when there is a vestibular lesion, that is the inner ear is involved, then the nystagmus is away from the side of the lesion, and in the cerebellar lesion, nystagmus is towards the side of lesion. So here the movements of the eyeball are being tested. As you can see, first the subject is instructed that he just has to follow the finger of the examiner with his eyeballs only. That is, there will be no movement of the head. This is superior rectus of both the eyes we are testing. Now when we move it, when the finger is moved on the right side, as you can see on one eye there is adduction, one eye abduction. The finger is moved on the left side. This was a torsional movement. So again a torsional movement. So cycloversion, and here again one eye oblique muscle will act and on the other eye recti will act. So in the exam, first you can do the movements of one eye by closing one eye. Then you can do the movements of both eyes. Now we are testing the pupillary light reflex. So again, after explaining the procedure to the subject, so this is the direct pupillary light reflex. So you can see the torch is shown tangentially, that is from the side. The subject will not move the eyeball. You have to see the constriction of the pupil. So this is the direct pupillary light reflex. And the pathways I just told you for these direct pupillary light reflex. And when you have to test the indirect pupillary light reflex, then you will ask the subject to place his hand on the bridge of the nose such that the thumb completely occludes the bridge of the nose. Now they are testing the accommodation reflex. See, first the subject was told to see a distant point and then near point by bringing your own finger behind. That's it. Now this was how we test the various muscles and the light reflex and the accommodation reflex, and the rest, that is the presence of the pupil size and the diameter and its shape, presence of squint, poses and nystagmus, you have to observe it. Now when we talk about the applied aspects, then in this diagram it is mainly shown the presence of diplopia. Diplopia is the double vision which can occur due to the paralysis of any muscle. So due to the restricted eye movements, this diplopia can occur. Now when the third nerve paralysis is occur there, so as you know, it supplies all the muscles of the eye except lateral rectus and superior oblique. So if third nerve is paralyzed due to the overaction of the lateral rectus and superior oblique, your eyeball moves down and out. There will be ptosis because there is paralysis of LPS, levator palpebris superioris. Then the ocular movements will also get restricted. Pupil will be fixed and dilated because the light reflex will be absent. Then the accommodation reflex will also be absent, so there will be loss of accommodation. Now in the exam, this question is commonly asked: how you distinguish the ptosis of third nerve injury, sympathetic nerve injury, that is Horner syndrome, and myasthenia gravis. Because in all these conditions, ptosis is present. So in third nerve injury, ptosis is associated with the dilated pupil. Now, if this ptosis is associated with miosis, that is constricted pupil, it is due to the injury to the sympathetic ganglia at T1 level, that is the Horner syndrome, and its all other features will also be present. Now, when there is ptosis with a normal pupil and accommodation reflex present, then it is due to myasthenia gravis. Next. Now, when the fourth nerve is paralyzed, so when the fourth nerve will be paralyzed, that is superior oblique, SO4, trochlear nerve is involved, then the eyeball will turn upwards and inwards because there will be overaction of inferior oblique and other muscles. So it will not be able to move down and out. So superior oblique is not working. So there is double vision going, like while you are moving down these stairs or while you are reading books. So you will ask the patient to turn the eye and then to look down. It will cause vertical hypertropia, that is elongation of the eye, and it will move upwards and inwards. Next. Now when the sixth nerve or the abducent nerve is paralyzed, so lateral rectus muscle will not be able to work and the eye will be adducted and there will be failure of lateral movement. Next. Marcus-Gunn pupil. Marcus-Gunn pupil is a defect mainly in the afferent pathway of the pupillary light reflex. So direct light reflex is absent in the affected eye, but the consensual reflex will be present because, as we just discussed, in the pathway of the light reflex, there is crossing over at the level of pretectal nucleus, and Edinger-Westphal nucleus is supplied by both the eyes, fibers from both the eyes. So supposedly there is a defect in the left eye afferent pathway. So direct reflex on the left eye will be absent, but when you will show the light on the right eye, then the fibers through it will also supply the left side, and hence the indirect reflex or the consensual light reflex will be present. So for this we do a swinging flashlight test. So here we are doing a swinging flashlight test. So from one eyeball we are moving to the opposite eyeball. Now Argyll-Robertson pupil is seen in neurosyphilis or the tertiary syphilis, that is the third grade of the syphilis. Here accommodation reflex is present. So as you can see, Argyll-Robertson AR comes. So with that AR you can remember that in Argyll-Robertson pupil, accommodation reflex is present but the light reflex is absent, and it is mainly a relative afferent pupillary defect. Now in the reverse Argyll-Robertson pupil, there is lesion in the frontal eye field. So due to which the accommodation reflex is absent, but the light reflex is present. AD's pupil, or you can also say RC pupil, because it is very slow to react to both the light reflex and the accommodation reflex. So response will be present, but it will be present very slowly, and it is seen in peripheral neuropathy. Next. Now the laws associated with the eye movements. So agonist muscles are the ones that cause specific eye movements, like the lateral rectus will cause abduction. Now the antagonists are the muscles which will actually oppose the action of the agonist. So if lateral rectus is causing abduction, its antagonist will be medial rectus because it will completely oppose its action. Synergistic muscles are the two muscles which move an eye in the same direction, are known as synergist. As we just saw that superior rectus and inferior oblique both cause elevation of the eye, so they are synergist for the same eye. Now the yoke muscles are the muscles that cause the two eyes, that is both the left and right eye, to move in the same direction. So supposedly we have to do dextroversion. Dextroversion is when you see on the right side. So when you do dextroversion, then the lateral rectus of the right eye and the medial rectus of the left eye, both of these will act like yoke muscles. So here again it is shown that medial rectus and lateral rectus are antagonists. Then synergist, superior rectus and inferior oblique, as both are causing elevation. Then again antagonist are superior rectus and inferior rectus are antagonists. Inferior oblique and superior oblique are also antagonists. Then again inferior rectus and superior oblique are synergistic because they both will cause a downward movement. Now, there are two laws associated with the eye movement. First is the Hering's law and second is the Sherrington's law. Now the Hering's law states that the muscles which cause the movement of eye in the same direction are equally innervated. So all the muscles which will cause the movement of eye in the same direction are equally innervated. So on the first diagram, as we can see, medial rectus of the right eye and lateral rectus of the left eye. That is when there is levoversion. Then in that case, when these both muscles, medial rectus of the right eye and lateral rectus of the left eye, are equally innervated because they cause the movement of eye in the same direction. So it is talking about the muscles of both eyes. Then on the bottom diagram, in the second diagram, it is shown again dextroversion. And then here again it is shown that the right eye medial rectus and left eye medial rectus. That is when you are doing convergence. Both the medial recti are being stimulated together. Then again they are being equally innervated. They are being equally supplied. So both can act together. Both the eyeballs can act together and cause the same movement. That is convergence. Now the Sherrington's law of reciprocal innervation states that when one of the muscle receives an innervation to contract, then its antagonist muscle will receive the innervation to relax. So as we just saw, if we discuss about lateral rectus and medial rectus, of one eye only, of right eye. So if the right eye is seen laterally, its lateral rectus is contracting. Then at the same time, medial rectus of the right eye will relax. So they are reciprocally innervated. This is the Sherrington's law. So Hering's law was mainly for two eyes when we were discussing the muscles of both the eye. And Sherrington's law is for one eye. So again, you can see the agonist is being supplied positively, and at the same time, the antagonist will not be supplied. This is when we talk about the same eye. So if the medial rectus of the right eye is contracting, then its lateral rectus will relax. Its antagonist will relax. Now these supranuclear eye movements, mainly there are 6 supranuclear eye movements. First is saccades. Saccades is mainly how you shift your gaze. Like when you are reading any object or any word, when you are reading a book, then how your movement, how your eyes are shifting from one letter to the other or from one word to other. Or when you are moving in a car, then how your gaze is shifting from one point to the other, like from one tree to the next thing. That is saccades. Then smooth pursuit is when you are able to follow a moving object. Like when the lizard is crawling on the wall and you are able to follow its path, then that is known as smooth pursuit. So vergence, then third is vergence. Vergence is mainly convergence and divergence. So convergence when both the medial recti work together. Then gaze fixation, when your eyesight is fixed on a one particular object, that is gaze fixation. Now the vestibular eye movements are the eye movements which occur during rotation. They are for brief time. And optokinetic are again the eye movements that are occurring in the rotation movement for a long time. So thank you. That was all for today.